Good morning everyone, today we're checking out a brand new video that was recommended to us by the one and only good man Nico himself of what if Marvel was steampunk, a video posted and by Comics with T-Rev, or I'm guessing it's meant to be pronounced like Trev, whatever, let's hop in and just check this out. I forgot to do one thing. Sorry about that, still had the screen completely flipped from the previous recording. Okay, now let's hop in.
How's it going, everyone? Bootleg Popcross Studios, your mom said we have a home here, and welcome to this video where I take Marvel characters and put them into a steampunk world. And if you enjoyed what you see here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out with the ever-mysterious algorithm, and it lets me know you want videos similar to this one. So anyway, I think this intro is long enough.
I do like steampunk.
Peter Parker was young when he lost his parents. He heard all throughout his life that they died in a Zeppelin accident, but he always had a hard time believing this. He was adopted by his aunt and uncle, and even though they didn't have a lot of money, they made up for it in their love and support for Peter.
Very classic.
But they had been hiding a secret from him up until he started to attend high school. Peter was now old enough to learn about the Great Web. When people die, they are reborn as spiders in this ever-expanding web.
Great Web?
It is their job to catch wayward souls for God to feast upon.
Okay, that's actually not too technically different from the actual Spider-Man lore. Well, I know some of you are probably being like, hey, Fox, what the hell are you talking about? Technically speaking, every time a Spider-Man was born or created or anything like that, they were added to what's known as the Web of Life, which is under the guise and guardianship of an entity known as the Spiral Totem. I forget the actual name. But pretty much think of it as a god comparable to the Black Panther god. And the full, T'Challa and Wakanda and all that, but instead of it being a Black Panther, it's a spider. So every single spider person is connected through that web.
Both Aunt May and Uncle Ben extended their hands to Peter, telling him to join them and their fellow members in a church of spiders. Peter did not know how to react to this, but he didn't have much of a choice. May and Ben took Peter to the church and asked him to put on a red and blue robe as the ceremony was about to begin. He sees his fellow classmates there,
okay.
Gwen Stacy, Eugene Thompson, Miles Morales, Cindy Moon, and Edward Brock, all on the
All spider people.
stage looking as confused as him. Suddenly, Norman Osborn, the founder of Oscorp, walks up in a green and purple robe. He starts to give a speech about their spider god and the Great Web, then pivots to a eulogy about the members who lost their lives and are now serving God. He asks new members to hold out their hands and expose their wrists. Everyone does that, and Norman pulls out a jar of sickly-looking spiders from his sleeve. He opens the jar, shaking the spiders on their wrist. Then, one by one, the spiders bite them all. Norman adjourns this meeting and instructs the parents of the new members to put their kids to bed and keep an eye on them, and if they pass in their sleeps, don't feel sad for them. It was just their time to go and serve God on the Great Web.
Oh, well, that's
After Peter hears the possibility of his own death, he becomes very worried. May and Ben took Peter home. He tried to fight them off, but he was progressively getting weaker, and then he collapsed. He wakes up in bed, still feeling weak with a high fever, and sees a small clockwork spider on his dresser. The spider doesn't move, but it looked like it was watching him. Peter would slip in and out of consciousness. All he could think about was his parents. Peter wakes up again, this time feeling like he can take on the world. He felt stronger, and he didn't even need to wear his glasses anymore. He runs down the stairs full of energy, even doing a small wall run as he makes it to the living room to greet his aunt and uncle. May and Ben were so ecstatic that Peter survived, and they all hug each other. Peter was confused though when they said that he survived. Then he remembers. They forced him to join this cult. News spread that all the new recruits survived as well, and they would all meet up after school to talk about what was going on. Gwen brings up that she noticed Norman was wearing makeup, and said that she thought she saw a small green patch on Norman's face. Miles asked everyone if they believed in the Great Web, and everyone answered no, and their parents forced them to join as well. Peter asks why they can't just leave, then Eugene replies sarcastically with, "There's only one way out, death." After saying that, everyone tells Eugene to shut up, but Peter thinks he has a point. Peter would eventually start saying,
got a question for all of you out there. Who the hell is this Eugene person? And, I understand the other people they were saying. Gwen Stacy, Peter Parker, Miles Morales, and Eddie Brock, even that Moon person. And I know all of them, but who is this last person?
Seeing his friends less and less, and then stop seeing them entirely. He would spend most of his time cooped up in his room, reading and studying. The clockwork spider was still in his room. He figures it was some kind of religious totem that all members have, but he hates the fact that it feels like it's watching him, so he turns it around. But as he did this, it turns itself back around, staring at him. He then moves it to his closet and goes back to his book. He hears scurrying and looks back to his dresser just to see the spider watching him again. He grabs it and throws it out the window, watching it break when it hits the ground. And he goes back to his book again.
It's going to be reassembled.
To see another clockwork spider on his dresser. Out of that, he decides to spend more time at the library,
it's just another one.
away
Okay.
from that spider. He starts to read a book about radiation written by Dr. Brutus Banner, and it describes the side
Bruce
effects
Banner.
of a person undergoing radiation poisoning. This perfectly matches what him and his friends went through. The spiders that bit them were irradiated, but why? He met up with the science teacher, Dr. Kurt Connors, at the school and to discuss more about radiation.
Wait, isn't that
This
the
wasn't really
lizard?
his field of study though. He was more of a DNA specialist, but he had heard about scientists at Oscorp splicing animal DNA with radiation to create cures for diseases. That explanation
is the
convinced
lizard.
Peter that Norman was using members of the cult as human test subjects. But his thought was interrupted by Dr. Connors telling Peter that he was late for church. Peter had a strange tingle feeling in his head and was confused. How did he know about the church? Connors replied to Peter saying Norman is an old friend of his, and because of him, he got his arm back, and is forever in his debt. Kurt brought Peter to the church where Norman was waiting for him. He brought Peter up on stage, and Norman announced that Peter, who has a gift for science and knowledge, is now able to ascend the ranks. Norman revealed that he was keeping an eye on
Okay.
everyone to see if they were ready to level up, but he can only pick one member to truly ascend to become the host for their god. And as he says this, his son Harrison Osborn wheels out a big container holding an amorphous black mass with tendrils that resemble spider legs. This gooby blob looks angry
Venom
or
symbiote?
maybe scared. Every time Norman gets close to it, it starts swimming around like it was trying to break the glass, and would even grow black spikes and hide in a corner. But when Peter is near it, it almost looks like it can sense Peter's resentment to this church, and it calms down. Peter places his hand on the glass, and the blob mimics this behavior by placing a tendril on the inside of the glass and shaping it into a small hand. Norman tells his son to
Whoa.
open the container, and the blob lunges towards Peter, and it covers him head to toe in this black featureless suit as it sinks into his flesh, making him look normal again. Everyone cheers, except Edward Brock, who sulks out of the church. Peter will
Eddie
hear a deep
Brock.
voice in his mind. In this deep growl, the
Venom
voice
host.
says,
Everyone is not safe.
and that tingling feeling comes back when Peter stares at Norman. The Parkers went home, but Peter splits up from his aunt and uncle, saying that he's going to hang out with his friends. He runs to an alley and checks if the coast is clear, and starts talking to this god. It explains that it is no god, but a being from space, who was inside of a meteorite that crash landed in Central Park.
Yep,
It was found
the
by
symbiote.
Norman Osborn, who was walking with a limp and a cane. He ordered his men to contain this creature, and back at the lab, they experimented on it. They found out that this thing needed to bond to a host through symbiosis in order for it to stay alive, but it refused to bond to Norman because they were not compatible. This symbiote senses that Peter was not like any other human. He had a trace amount of spider DNA and asked Peter if he tested out his new abilities. Peter tells the symbiote no, but he does feel
Abilities?
stronger now, and he has a tingling sensation whenever he's in danger. The
the
symbiote
spider
then tells
sense.
Peter to climb this wall. Peter was hesitant at first, but he placed a hand on the wall, and then his other hand, and then he started to climb up it like a spider. As he makes it to the top, the symbiote tells Peter to run off the building. Peter refuses, but then his legs start moving on their own, and as they jump off, the symbiote shoots a black thread from the top of Peter's hand, and they swing across the New York skyline. The symbiote tells Peter to hold
Okay.
his breath, as to not breathe in the smoke and steam coming from the pipes and chimneys. They stop at the top of the Empire State Building so Peter can catch his breath. This was actually a lot of fun for him. Swinging in the air like that was the first time that him and his symbiote ever felt free. He jumps off and starts swinging more and sees a man trying to mug someone. The symbiote covers Peter's body in a black suit with wide eyes to protect him, and they jump down in front of the
Obviously,
mugger,
gotta hide that
terrifying him.
face.
The mugger runs off and Peter fires a black web at the guy, tying him up. The person thanks him and asks for his name. He takes a minute to think of a fake name and says, "I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," and swings off at night. This will be a nightly thing for him and the symbiote to do. They'll go on patrol
Love it. Love that they made the name that kind of canon way.
and fight muggers and robbers. And before Peter knew it, he started to become famous. He would let this fame go to his head and would even be more aggressive towards the criminals he encountered, beating them within an inch of their lives. But he would never try to kill anyone, thinking that people, no matter what they've done, deserve a second chance in life. Peter hears sirens coming from the distance, and as he follows the noise, he finds the police surrounding his house. He asked the police officer what the problem was, and then he saw 2 body bags being loaded into an ambulance.
Oh,
The officer
no.
told him 2 people were murdered here, and immediately Peter knew he lost his aunt and uncle. He hears the cops saying they found a suspect heading to an abandoned church, and he runs off, allowing the symbiote to cover his body again. He finds the church and sees a silhouette in the window. He swings into the window, breaking the glass, and sees Edward Brock with blood splattered all over him.
Eddie,
He tells
how
Peter that
could
should have
you?
been him. He should have been chosen to be God's host. Peter says nothing, not even a quip. Instead, he starts throwing punches at Edward in blind rage. Edward taunts Peter, asking, "Why are you mad at me? You hated your aunt and uncle for forcing you to join. I did you a favor."
That
This
still is only
infuriated
family.
Peter more. He was forced to join, but everyone there was brainwashed by Norman, including Aunt May and Uncle Ben. They didn't deserve to die. Peter picked up Edward and held him out of the window. He hears the symbiote telling him to let go, but Peter couldn't bring himself to do it. He starts feeling his fingers moving on their own. The symbiote was trying to control him, but he fights it and throws Edward back inside. Peter was wrestling with the symbiote and knocked into a bell, which caused the symbiote to writhe in pain. He keeps ringing the bell and forcefully removes the symbiote from himself, and he collapses in exhaustion. He wakes up to see both Edward and the symbiote gone. Some time passed, and Peter was living in a cheap apartment in the city. Without the symbiote, he would need to make himself a new suit. He created goggles with interchangeable lenses, which can magnify his vision, and a wrist-mounted grappling hook with a spool of rope, which he carries on his back. One night on patrol,
Not
he
bad.
sees a mugger, and when he swings in to help the bystander, a portal opens up under the mugger's feet, which leads into a jail cell. The bystander runs off,
wait,
and
what?
Peter sees a man with clockwork hands hovering above him. He says to Peter, "Spider-Man, welcome to the Avengers."
Oh, the one that opened the portal must be Doctor Strange. Eye of Agamotto. Wait, what would that actually be then?
Henry Pym is a brilliant scientist.
Ooh,
You might even call him
Ant-Man.
a mad
This is gonna
scientist.
be cool.
He created what he calls the Pym particles, a subatomic particle that has the ability to shrink and grow objects and organic matter. He is also one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top scientists. Henry was always so wrapped up in his work, so much so that this was one of the reasons why his wife, Janet Van Dyne, left him. Another reason is he is a very unstable person. Henry would create a jumpsuit with a gas mask, hook up to 2 oxygen tanks on the back. One tank has Pym particles that would make a person shrink, while the other tank has particles that would make a person grow. He demonstrates the suit to Nicola Fury, showing that S.H.I.E.L.D.
Nicola,
agents can shrink down to
Fury.
the size
Okay.
of an ant, giving them a greater advantage to stealth. Nicola Fury loves this idea and orders Henry to make more suits. Later that night, there was a break-in at Henry's mansion. Someone had stolen his first prototype suit. There's a string of robberies and nobody was sure who the suspect was. The main
that must
culprit
have been a
was an
wasp
ex-con named Scott Lang, but he has a strong alibi. He was working as an ice cream vendor when the robbery was taking place. At least, that's what he wants everyone to believe. He robbed Henry's house and had one of his friends cover for him at his job. This isn't Scott's first rodeo. He did time because he's a well-known cat burglar, but he doesn't do this so he can be rich and famous. He does it because he's a single father caring for a daughter with little to no money to his name. On the night of the robbery, Scott breaks into the mansion and starts looting it. He sees a light coming from behind a bookshelf. He starts taking books out one by one until he hears a click and a secret door opens. He walks in and sees a strange jumpsuit with a gas mask that looks like it resembles an ant's head. He hears sirens and grabs the suit, but he has no room in his bag. So he puts it on, and as he buckles the harness, his hand slipped on a big red button in the center, and he shrinks down. He has no idea what just happened, but before he can figure out how to return to normal size, he runs out of the house. As he's running, he's trying to find a place to hide, and sees a big dirt mound and hides there. Suddenly, an ant that looks like the size of a horse steps out in front of Scott, terrifying him. The ant would smell Scott using its antennas, and it would walk away and join a long line of ants passing by. Scott will leave the anthill and run far away from the mansion as possible, where he would fiddle around with the harness, trying to figure out how to grow back to his normal height. He found a button and pressed it again, hoping he wouldn't shrink more, and he returned back to normal. He would hide the suit at his friend's house, knowing the cops wouldn't search there. Scott was sure that selling the suit would be a good idea, so he kept it and figured he could use the suit to...
I'll go ahead and actually tell y'all, I never watched any of the Ant-Man movies. I know, how could I, why didn't you, yada yada yada. I kind of just didn't. That's all it is.
rob more mansions. He was testing up what all the suit can do, and learned that the gas is what makes him shrink, but he only had a limited supply of it, and has no idea how to make more. He also sees some discs in a pouch. One has a red light and the other has a blue light. You place the one with the red light on a box and press the button, and watch as the box shrink. He then switched to the disc with the blue light, and the box grew. He also noticed antennas on the mask and puts it on, and he hears nothing. He saw an ant crawling up on his countertop and was looking up back at him. He leaned closer to the ant and told it to leave, and the ant listened to him and walked away. So now Scott knows how the suit works, so he comes up with plans to rob more houses. As news spread of this mysterious cat burglar, Scott knew it was time to put the suit back in hiding for a bit. That was until he heard a buzzing sound and felt something sting the back of his neck. His vision went hazy,
Ow,
then he
wasp.
passed out. He would wake up in an interrogation room in S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. There he sees a man in a black trench coat and an eye patch, with what looks like a wasp flying right next to him.
Nick
He
Fury.
introduced himself as Nicola Fury, and the wasp grew. It was a woman wearing one of the shrink suits, except she had wings on hers, which Scott felt jealous about, and now he wanted wings on his. She introduced herself as Janet Van Dyne and asked Scott why he stole her ex-husband's suit. Scott was refusing to talk. Instead, he asked for his lawyer, which Nicola replied back saying he stole government property, which is grounds for treason, but he's willing to let it slide if Scott can help Janet find Henry Pym. S.H.I.E.L.D. was suspicious of Henry of being a Hydra spy. They think this because Janet was following Henry in her own shrink suit when the robbery was taking place. Henry went to a Hydra meeting where he would step on stage and show off his new yellow and black shrink suit. Scott has a choice to make, either go to prison for treason or track down the man whom he stole from. The choice is obvious, but if he's joining them, then he wants wings as well. Janet gave Scott a small robotic ant that Henry made. It has wings and a handle so Scott can ride on it, and off they went. They found Henry's car, but no sign of Henry anywhere. They see a note inside, and it says, "I want what you stole from me. If I don't get it back, I'll take what is yours in return." The note was written on the back of a picture of Scott and his daughter Cassie, with X's over her eyes. Now Scott is furious and flies back to his house with Janet following. They arrive and see nothing out of the ordinary. Scott sees Cassie and gives her a big hug, asking if she's okay. She answered, of course, in confusion. Suddenly, Scott hears a buzzing sound and was hit by a shrink disc. As he shrinks, he sees a man in a jumpsuit similar to his, but his was yellow and black with discs on the shoulders. He reveals himself as Henry Pym and follows the reveal with an "Hail Hydra" as he fires a small bolt of lightning towards Scott. Janet takes Cassie to safety as she sees two tiny people fighting. Henry was firing small bolts of electricity while Scott was running to find something he can use as a weapon. He sees a pencil which to him looks like the size of a tree. Henry was flying towards Scott and Scott picked up the pencil by the eraser and swung it, knocking Henry aside. He ran out of the house while Henry was following him and Scott sees an anthill. He would lead Henry to the hill and yell "charge." Suddenly the whole colony of ants started crawling out and charged Henry. Henry was firing bolts of electricity hitting some of the ants, but he was being overwhelmed. As the ants were biting his suit, they must have been through an emergency valve.
Oh, my mistake. The Thunderbolts is kind of what pissed me off. It's actually not Wasp, it's the Bumblebee. Because if y'all remember that in Teen Titans there actually was a character that could shrink and grow and shoot Thunderbolts. Bumblebee. I don't remember if that was her actual name. So yeah, you got Ant-Man, Wasp, and Bumblebee. Or, I guess, just B? I'm honestly not sure.
Henry from breathing in too many Pym particles, and he began to shrink more and more. As Scott was watching this, he saw Henry shrink to the point where he would just disappear. He figured this was the end, so he enlarged his cells back to normal. He found Janet and Cassie, and they both were fine. Janet told Scott that he was pretty good in that suit, and asked if he needed a steady paycheck, he can go work for a group of other like-minded individuals. Scott asked, like S.H.I.E.L.D.? Janet replied with, no, the Avengers.
Haha, and that's how he joined in. Spider, Ant, what's next? Actually, I'm curious about who will be next.
Dr. Brutus Banner is a frail, meek person.
Hulk.
He's like this because he had an abusive father growing up. The abuse was so bad that he developed dissociative identity disorder and created an alter named Joe Fixit, a tough, no-nonsense personality that Brutus wishes he could be.
Interesting choice with going with Joe Fixit as the alternate personality. To explain who that is actually the name given to the Grey Hulk transformation. Pretty much has the strength of the Hulk, but the intelligence of Bruce. But the attitude is more that of like a 1970s New Yorker mafia man. And I'm not kidding, the actual suit the guy's wearing is straight up mafia. Pinstripe and everything. Dude even got white gloves to fit his massive hands.
Over time, it seemed like this personality would quietly disappear in the farthest recess of his mind. That was until the accident. Brutus works as a scientist at S.H.I.E.L.D., creating weapons, and the one that made him the most famous, for all the wrong reasons, was a gamma-radiated bomb. Radiation was a hot craze at this time, but more research needed to be done to find out about its lasting impacts on the human body. While testing the bomb, he sees a teenager in the blast site. He tried yelling at the teen to run away, but he couldn't hear him. The countdown was ticking, and Brutus ran into the field. With seconds on the clock, Brutus tackles the teen in a ditch, protecting him from the blast. But Brutus was a
Okay, no. I'm actually kind of liking this one a lot because the lore he's going for isn't from like the movies or anything, but is from the actual original comics. Because at the testing site, some jackass in Corvette or whatever, I don't know, was just driving through. Bruce was calling out to him, trying to get him to go away. But I guess the teen had his music up too loud or something. So anyway, he went over, pulled the guy out of the car, and tossed him into a trench. But before he could jump in, the bomb went off. And boom, he was bathed in radiation.
fortunately irradiated by the gamma explosion. Brutus would wake up at the SHIELD medbay. Surprisingly, he didn't have a scratch on him. No burns, no scar tissues. He was
Surprisingly,
totally
yeah.
fine. That was until night struck. When his body was hit by the moonlight, Brutus would transform into this hulking gray creature filled with so much unbridled rage. He would
And the night transformation, that is actually from a different set of comics. Hulk is treated like a werewolf transformation.
break out of the SHIELD headquarters and wreak havoc in the city.
Can't remember
Then
the
he
name.
would wake up back in his childhood home. The home was a wreck, and all the pictures of Brutus' father were torn to shreds. As Brutus walked out, he was greeted by the sight of the U.S. Army surrounding his house. He was arrested and locked up in an underground facility surrounded by thick walls of concrete. He would be interrogated by General Thaddeus Ross, his soon-to-be father-in-law. He
Ooh,
would ask
the Red
Brutus
Hulk.
what happened, but Brutus didn't have an answer. He just blacked out and woke up in his old home. Ross didn't like his answer, and things were getting heated very quickly. Thaddeus Ross never liked Banner, but now he downright hated him, calling him a monster, and swears if he goes anywhere near his daughter again, he will not hesitate to kill him. Brutus's eyes were glowing green,
That
and
makes
Thaddeus
sense.
smiled, saying, "There's the monster." He would put on a gas mask, and the room would fill with knockout gas. Brutus would wake up in a daze and realize there was no way out. At first, he thought that this was for the best, but the raging Hulk inside him would disagree. He would start to transform, but instead of turning gray like before, he would turn green and starts punching the walls. The gas would fill the room again. At first, it looks like Brutus was about to fall asleep, but this will infuriate the Hulk more, making him withstand the effects of the gas. He would break free and run far away. He would find a cave and rest there for the night, eventually turning back into Brutus Banner.
Very
Seems like the
classic.
army hasn't found him yet, so he would sneak back into the city with guards surrounding his house. Seeing this, he would find Betty Ross, his fiancée, and ask her to grab as much of his supplies as she can. She did just that, and Brutus would experiment himself to see what exactly was going on. After his latest transformation,
Good
it
thinking.
looks like he no longer transforms at night. But now the transformation is triggered by an increase in adrenaline caused by intense emotions, mostly anger.
Now we
If
got
this is the case,
traditional
and the
Hulk.
military is after him, Brutus nor Betty is safe here. So Brutus decided the best thing to do was to sneak out of America and learn how to control his emotions. He would travel the globe, never staying in the same place for too long, and learn how to meditate. He learned a breathing technique that will help him calm down if
This is actually kind of interesting. Instead of giving him purple pants like every other kind of Hulk in existence, you gave him a purple shirt. That's all.
he ever feels the slightest rise in adrenaline. He would take odd jobs wherever he goes to make some money to live off of, and while working at the loading docks, he sees the U.S. ships in the distance. In a panic, he would run and hide in a factory, and the U.S. military would surround it. Brutus was panicking. He tried the breathing technique, and it would work for a minute, but his heart was still racing, and then he felt his mind going blank. Suddenly, the
Uh-oh.
Hulk would charge the hallways, pushing and throwing soldiers away from him. They started to open fire, but the bullets were bouncing off him, making him angrier. Suddenly, Thaddeus showed up and would walk closer to the rampaging Hulk. But he wasn't there to instigate any more violence. Instead, he was trying to calm Brutus down. Of course,
Okay.
the Hulk wasn't buying it. But then Thaddeus mentioned that Betty is in danger. Hydra kidnapped her along with the rest of S.H.I.E.L.D. scientists.
Wait,
This enrages the
Abomination?
Hulk more. But instead of getting stronger, he would turn back into Brutus, knowing that Brutus was smarter than him and could figure out a way to save Betty. They went back to America, and Brutus designed a device he can wear on his wrist, along with several vials of gamma-radiated liquids he could use to inject himself with to forcefully transform into the Hulk. He would meet up with other
Oh.
heroes who called themselves the Avengers. And now it is time to take on Hydra.
I kind of like it. At the end, this Hulk kind of took on a variation of the one from the MCU nearing the end. And well, it has the intelligence of Bruce, but the strength of Hulk. Then again, the only reason why that even is from what I was able to pick up, all these irradiated vials right here. Okay, so who's last? Oh look, that was the Joe Fixit one. Does not look that good.
Dr. Stephen Strange was a real
here we go.
and because of this, he developed a bit of an ego. He was
Also, what I said about it not looking that good, that has nothing to do with the artist or his skill. Literally just because of the clothes. I guess I'm just kind of used to Joe Fixit being in the mafia style suit. Well, he only looks good in that. This, I know, it's just transformation.
rich and famous, but there was a Zeppelin accident that would change his life forever. The Zeppelin he was in got struck down by a strange man, clad in green robes, flying on a glider, laughing maniacally. He would wake up in a hospital covered in bandages.
Wait, Green Goblin? For a second I thought it was going to be Victor Von Doom.
But when he looked down, he was mortified. His hands were too badly damaged by the accident and was amputated. Without his hands,
Ouch.
he could no longer operate, and therefore he could never go back to his life as a surgeon. He was depressed, but eventually he heard word of a temple in Nepal called Kamrataj that could heal anything. Dr. Strange didn't believe in Eastern medicine, but he felt like he was out of options. So he traveled to
Kinda
Nepal,
was.
and when he made it to the steps of Kamrataj, they refused to let him in. He was furious. He traveled all this way, and for what? She refused to leave, even sleeping on the steps. Then suddenly, an old bald lady walks out, asking if he was worthy to learn their ways. Strange said, of course he is. He healed people. Then the old lady interrupted him, saying he profited off of healing others. His motivations, although good, were corrupted by greed. Stephen looked down for a second. Then the old lady opened the door, inviting him inside. She introduces herself as the Ancient One, and Stephen asks for all
I
the
thought her name was
equipment
the
is.
Master.
The Ancient One looks confused and asks, what equipment? Stephen replies back saying, this is a hospital, right? She shook her head and said, no, this is a school for magic. Stephen rolled his eyes. He came all this way for healing, and now he's going to be lectured with a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. He was going to walk out, but the Ancient One plunged her fist into Stephen's chest, releasing his spirit. He asked if she killed him. She replied with, no, this is an actual protection. Not bad for a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, huh? And with a flick of her finger, she flung Stephen into the mirror dimension. As he's falling, he sees the world warping around him and sees reflections of himself. Some looking quite odd though. Some reflections look like him as a zombie, some as him in what he can only describe as the future, and some where he looks like an actor who could play Sherlock Holmes. He suddenly gets flung.
Okay, no, I love that simply because it's calling out about the whole multiverse. You got Zombie Strange and I'm kind of forgetting the actor's name that actually does play him, but all in all,
back into
nice.
his body and
Thumbs
begs the
up.
agent one to teach him. She was hesitant at first, but she knows Stephen has a good heart, and then she accepts. She gives him prosthetic hands and tells him to make them move. He tries, but nothing is happening. The Ancient One explains to him that magic isn't something that can be conjured up out of thin air, but instead the ability to harness the elements around them, control and bend them to whatever they can imagine. And if he can do that, then he can make his hands move. His homework was to try to move his metal hands. He would stay up all night and was about to give up until he made his index finger move. It was a small improvement, but it was still a big win for him. He was at this for days and managed to gain full control of his new hands.
Haha,
Now he is ready to master the art of magic. He would train in the dojo with other soon-to-be sorcerers, and they were practicing on creating portals. Stephen struggled at first, but he quickly mastered the spell, even with some students looking jealous. He spent most of his night studying at the library and found a book that talks about the Infinity Gems. The Time Gem was acquired
Infinity Gems
by Akamoto, an ancient sorcerer who placed a gem in a medallion called the Eye. Suddenly, Wong, the keeper of the books, grabbed the book that Stephen was reading and tells him the Infinity Gems are off limits. Stephen will quickly master all the spells they are teaching in the class, but he still wants to know more about the Infinity Gems. He will be approached by the Ancient One as she congratulates him on his progress. She tells him about the title of Sorcerer Supreme, and Wong asks if this was a good idea. She said, of course, and bestows the Eye of Akamoto to Stephen, saying, your destiny awaits. Stephen accepts the gift and promises not to let her or Kamrataj down. He will learn how to use this amulet, at first rewinding time by making a half-eaten apple regrow its missing chunks. He would even try to peer into the future, first only be able to see a few minutes into the future, but the more he practiced, the better at it he became. As he's seeing into the future, he sees scientists working on a machine against their will, trying to open a portal. He also sees him and other heroes fighting this evil group. He knows what he has to do now. He thanks the Ancient One and travels back to America to set the events in motion. He first traveled to a mansion in the middle of the night and teleported a prototype shrink suit created by Henry Pym behind a secret door and waited for Scott Lang to arrive.
Ooh.
He then leaves an anonymous tip to Thaddeus Ross about the Hulk's location. And lastly, he stops a mugging taking place and talks to a man with a clockwork grappling hook strapped to his wrist, welcoming him to the Avengers.
Oh, that is actually really awesome and cool. Because normally it'd be Nick Fury that would be going around gathering the people, but instead, it's Doctor Strange. That is cool. I give this major thumbs up.
Alright, and the art is now finished, and I'm really proud with how this turned out. I thought I knew more than enough to do a steampunk video. Turns out I needed to do a bit more research. All I knew is cogs, gears, and old-timey fashion. And really that's pretty much everything, and I feel like I translated that good enough in the art, but in the storytelling, I feel like I could have added a little bit more, but other than that, I am really proud with how this turned out. The Ant-Man one was really difficult, because I don't really draw like a lot of characters like riding something, because not only are you drawing the character, but you're also drawing the vehicle,
Yeah, the
and
mount.
you have to like position them in like a certain way to like not make it look bad. I feel the proportions are a bit screwy on this one, but I don't know, I'm still really proud of how it turned out, and it's
Oh, yeah,
it was a
I
challenge
love
for
it.
me, and therefore I felt like I actually did a good job on doing the challenge. I really like how the Doctor Strange turned out. I think it's the
Agreed.
symmetry of it that looks really good. The Spider-Man one was the first one I did, and I just whipped that pose out. Spider-Man poses are very hard because they're trying to do like a spider-like pose on a human character. So they're
Oh,
like just
yeah. He
bending
does
and
kind of do like
contorting in
that.
ways that people don't normally bend and contort unless you're like very flexible, I guess. So yeah, trying to do that is difficult, and he's not contorting too much, but I don't know, I always struggle with Spider-Man poses. I love Spider-Man,
I
but
mean, I can understand
the
why.
poses can be very difficult. So I felt like I challenged myself a lot in this, and I'm very proud with how this turned out. And let me know which one's your favorite too in the comments down below. And if you have any suggestions,
Oh,
let me
good.
know. I've been getting some suggestions lately, and I can't promise I'll get to them, especially right away, but I have been saving them into a text document, so there is a possibility that I will get to your suggestion. If it's a pop culture thing that I'm not too familiar with, chances are I might be pushed back to a far, far distant future video, so I can actually have time to do research.
Alright, well that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.